Do you hear that music? Do you know what that is? I'll tell you at the end. I love it, so I'm gonna let it play for just a minute and then I'll stop it. Wish I could use it for our like theme music, but I don't think I'll get away with doing that, except maybe just this one little bit. So it's Mr. Rogers, which I never actually watched as a kid, or even as a teenager, because it was on for a while. So I started out with Mr. Rogers just because, he's a really, really interesting person. If you read his bio, you'll understand why so many people just really loved him and who he was. His real bio. There were some crazy rumors floating around that he was a Navy SEAL sniper or something like that, but he wasn't. He was just a real gentle person who believed in the education of children and accessibility to good programming and things like that. And I just think he had a great message. I wish I had watched that show when I was young, but I didn't. I was a Sesame Street girl, so I just wanted to have fun. And I might have resembled or identified with Oscar a little bit sometimes. So I really identify with the whole neighborhood thing when it comes to the shop. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Kim Young, Kimberly Young, and most people call me Kim. Few people call me Kimmy. Very, very few people. In fact, I don't know any. But you might get away with it once. People used to call me Kimber back in the 80s. Yes, I'm a child of the 80s. But most people just call me Kim. And the shop that I'm sitting in the middle of now is Sassy Jack's Stitchery. And hopefully a lot of you have been here. And if you haven't, I hope you find time to make a visit to us. We would love to have you come and hang out with us and take a poke around and see what we've got. And maybe even come and do a class with us. We're trying to do a lot of educational things and just a lot of fun things. And we're new. We are at the ripe old age of 2, just at the end of June. As a brick and mortar, I launched the business in 2014 in the middle of the year. As I launched it out of my house in Cary, North Carolina, actually, and I kept my day job. And if any of you have ever started a business, you can understand why I decided to keep my day job. It's the first few years are interesting, to say the least. And I was a corporate controller, and it took me a while to figure out when I wanted to leave that job and when the right time was. So I made that leap a couple years ago, and we went ahead and opened the doors here in the little town of Weaverville, which is one town over from the town I grew up in, and it's literally maybe 5 miles from the house I grew up in. So this is home for me, very, very much home, and I really love sharing it with all of you guys. So I do hope you come to visit us sometime. You'll see what we love about this place. And on that note, one of the things that we'll do with this Flosstube station is show you some of the surrounding area. I'll try to insert some little videos and pictures and things like that so that you can get a feel for this local area and kind of the fun things to do and see, and maybe things that you might want to explore while you're here. You'll note in the I guess the naming of the video, I called it Yonder Ways in the first one and in this one, and I will keep that. Yonder Ways is kind of a neat Southern colloquialism. If you're from this area and some other areas in the South, you can ask somebody where something is or how to get there, and they'll be like, oh, it's down yonder a ways, or it's over yonder a ways, or well, it's right over yonder. You can't miss it, And so yonder is a word. It probably comes from the Old English, to be quite honest. A lot of Scottish people settled here, and Scot-Irish people in North Carolina, because it looks a lot like Scotland. If you've ever been to Scotland, you'll note some similarities when you come here, and you'll see a lot of people who look like they might have some Celtic heritage, a little bit of red hair. We've probably got more redheads here than a lot of parts of the world, and so it's just a neat place. But yonder is an old word that we like, and it's also a play on words between young and ponder. And of course, my last name is Young. That's the name I was given when I was born. That's my dad's name. And I married a man in 2016 who never left home. I've traveled a lot, which if you guys ask me questions, I'll be happy to answer them about how I got here and what I did before. But I've went a lot of places. I think at last count I had my feet on the ground in 28 or 29 countries and lived in a few of them. And the wonderful man that I married literally moved across the street from his family's farm and never left. And so it's fantastic. We make a neat couple because we're very different in a lot of ways, and the same in some very deep seated ways. So a great pairing, I think, one that most local people never thought would happen, and were quite astounded when it did. We have a real funny story of the first time we met 25 years ago, so I'll save that for a different episode. And you'll have to ask me. I'm not just going to tell it, because if I tell my side, you'll want him to tell his side, because it's definitely a story to hear from both sides. So anyway, young, ponder, yonder. And the ways part of it comes from just, it's an old term to use to describe how to do something with your hands and how to make something. And so I've always loved the word. Summer House Stitch Works actually uses the Old English spelling of works kind of for the same thing. Week Style Works does the same thing. But I love the word ways and Yonder Ways, and so it's a natural fit for us. And we actually have some other plans to use it in the business in some other ways, and we probably will as we grow into that. So you might hear that later with some other things. Probably our classroom building, when we get it built, will be called Yonder Ways. So that is the naming of the Flosstube series, and how I came up with it. This video series is not really just about the shop. I want to respond to what you want to see in the shop. So if there are things that you want to know about the shop or about me, put it in the comments field, ask the questions. And as we go through the different episodes, I'll try to get those answered. I'm going to try to do this on a weekly basis. On Mondays, hopefully I'll record it and then try to get it out there by the end of the day. I can't always promise that. It's hard sometimes, but we're closed on Mondays. And so I'm always here doing shipping or, whatever needs to be done. So it's a good time for me to do this, and I'm going to try to commit to it and get it done and get it out there for you. So if there's things that you want to know or things that you want to see, feel free to post it down in the comment field. Today, what I wanted to do with you, what I want to talk to you about, I want to show you a few new things. You can see behind me, you see Mary Lee back there. So that is a release from Hands Across the Sea Samplers, and that's the model for it. And I will insert a link to a really nice video of that, or I may insert the video. I'll have to see how that works. But I will give you some close-up views of that model. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful sample. We do have the charts. They're really beautiful charts. I will show you a chart if you haven't seen a Hands Across the Sea chart. So this is the front cover. And Nicola always does put a really beautiful bookmark in with the chart, and she has started to, on the back of the bookmark, you can use it as a record of, when you stitched the sampler, what you stitched it on, when you completed it, all those good things. I just want to show you inside. So this is the centerfold for Mary Lee, and I know Nicola showed this in one of her videos too, so you've seen it before. But she does a really beautiful job with her charts, and so I'll just give you a little snippet of the chart. One of the things that Nicola does, or Hands Across the Sea does with their charts, that most people really can't do or haven't done in the detail that she does, is she gives some history. So there's usually 2 to 4 pages of history about either the girl who stitched the sampler, or about what was going on in the time period, or the village, or the place where the sampler originated. So it's a really neat insight into history, and it's a great step back into time. So we appreciate all the work that she puts into that. We have a publication company here in the shop called Sassy Samplers, where we actually have charted some of our antiques. We've had a few friends chart for us, Nicola being one of them, and produce those publications. There's a ton of work that goes into that. It's not a straightforward thing of sitting in front of your computer for a few hours and putting together a chart. It's a lot more than that. Just the publication software side of it. So you've got the charting software, and then you have the whole publication software side of it. So it's a process, and I just want to thank her for setting the bar out there the way that she does for a great publication. There's a lot of other people that do really beautiful charts as well. Needlework Press does a great chart. Blackbird does a great chart. You know, just some wonderful people doing great things in the last, I don't know, decade really. And there's quite a flurry around reproduction samplers right now. So now is a great time for those people who have loved reproductions for decades, because you've got so much choice out there with charts, with fabric, with fibers, just really fabulous things. I'm going to take a little drink of my favorite drink here, because I'm not used to talking this much. I'm a big talker, but not this much. Apologize for that. To be quite honest, Diet Pepsi is not my favorite drink. Mountain Dew is. And, whew, is that stuff bad for you? I love Mountain Dew, and I love gummy bears. So, you know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. I stopped drinking Mountain Dew when I moved to Holland back in the early 2000s, because it was ridiculously expensive and it was really hard to get. And so I lived in Rotterdam, which is just south of Amsterdam. And the only place I could get Mountain Dew was in the airport, in Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. And so I would, from my apartment, which was on the Maas River, it was really beautiful, I would walk over to the tram station. I would take the tram to the underground, to the tube, or train as it was called in Rotterdam, and I would ride the train to the airport, and I would go into their little grocery store and buy like a 6-pack of canned Mountain Dew, and I would take it home the same way I came and treasure it until it was gone like an hour later. So I stopped drinking Mountain Dew because it was just so hard, and also my dentist told me I had to because it was going to ruin my teeth. And then I came home to North Carolina, where, you know, Mountain Dew was, Pepsi was born here, and Mountain Dew followed very closely after. There's a really cute little video for Mountain Dew from when it first came out, which I will find and post for you too. It's really fun. You know, Mountain Dew is a slang term for moonshine. And so it originated, you know, in the mountains here, North Carolina, Tennessee. And so, anyway, I'm addicted passionately to Mountain Dew and gummy bears. So I went for like, I guess it was like 8 or 9 months without eating anything gummy. And the last class that we had here, we gave them out as treats. And of course, there were some left, and I fell off the wagon. So, anyway, back on the wagon for the gummies, back on the wagon for the Mountain Dew. You know, it's just a struggle. So I'm sure you have your own. So we talked about Mary Lee, and we talked about a little bit about reproduction samplers. Something fun is going to happen this week, and actually a few things fun are going to happen this week. We have Beth Steele Summerhouse Stitchworks coming in at the end of the week for a really fabulous finishing class, and we've got, I think, 27 people signed up for that. I think you'll love the class. It'll be a lot of fun. And Beth was here last year. I'm sure that she will be back. We'll be talking to her about that. It happens to be my birthday this weekend, so I'll be a ripe old 51, and I'm actually just glad I made it. So, and we're publishing another sampler from Sassafras Samplers, and I'll show you the proof. We did change it up a little bit. It's getting printed this week, and it'll be here by the weekend, but her name is Mary Good, and she's at the framer right now getting framed. So a lot of you got to see the model for Mary when you were here for Nicola's classes, and a lot of people loved it. So super excited to be bringing you Mary Good 1827. She is one that was charted for us by Nicola, and then Allie Dudley, who works with me, put together the booklet for her. So you'll notice maybe some similarities to Hands Across the Sea samplers, because we do honestly want to be as good as they are. I don't know that we'll ever make it, but we do our little centerfold There's not a ton of history about Mary, just because that name's a pretty popular name for her time period in England. And so we weren't able to find out a lot about her, but we were able to infer some things from her sampler. And so we've written about that on the back of the sampler. When Nicola was charting her, she sent me a note and she was really excited. She said, Kim, you won't believe what a great embroideress this young girl was. It's just, her work was just exemplary. So, Mary Good was a very good embroideress, and we're just so thrilled to have her, to have a chart of what she stitched in 1827 and to have been able to see, the product of her hands. So that will be a release that comes out later this week. We'll put it up for pre-order now that we know it's imminently coming from the printer this week. So I'll probably put that up in conjunction with this video. And if you would like to order it, you certainly can. I believe, let's see, I'm just going to have to read this for a second. I think that her sampler color was a really good match to DMC 738. So that makes her a very good match to Parchment from Weeks Dye Works Zweigart. I did post a video on my Facebook page for Sassy Jack Stitchery talking about the new linen from Weeks Dye Works Zweigart. It's a very different feel from Weeks' other line, and I just want to clarify, they're not replacing their other line. Lots of people love their normal line of linen, and so they're keeping that. They are taking their fantastic colors and applying it to a Zweigart base, primarily for the sampler world. And so we are going to have this luxurious color, on this a little bit firmer fabric that a lot of us like when you're stitching a big piece. So I stitch on normal Weeks all the time. In fact, the class that we have this weekend with Beth, I believe, is done on a Weeks base, a regular Weeks. But when you get into some larger pieces, sometimes a lot of us just like to have a little bit firmer feel to that linen because we're constantly stretching it and pulling it and using it for a long period of time. So the hand, we like it a little bit stiffer, and that's what this Zweigart base gives us. So this sampler, Mary Good, 1827, we're going to offer kits for it on a Weeks Dye Works Zweigart base in Parchment. So that means that we'll have it in 36, 40, and 46 count. And I'm going to ask them for a 32 count. I don't have any 32 count yet, but I think they may be able to do that for us in the future. So for now, for 32, we'll probably kit it on something else, or if you need it on a 28. But eventually we'll be able to bring that to you on the Weeks Dye Works Zweigart base as well. Weeks Dye Works is a North Carolina company. I don't know if you knew that, but Miranda, the owner of Weeks, is an NC State graduate. She's got a great history herself, so sometime you might want to check out her bio. But just a normal person that started doing some dyeing of fibers and fabrics, and created a really great company for us. So they've been very responsive to our needs and our requests around fabric and colors and things like that, and not just us, but a number of other shops as well that kind of helped lobby to bring us this Zweigart based fabric from Weeks Dye Works. So we're super excited about that. I hope you are too. So that's Mary Good. I want to show you, I didn't show you the little card from Mary Lee, so I'll show you that. So Nicola produces these really beautiful cards whenever the sampler lends itself to the right layout. So it has to be a little bit rectangular. If it's square, it's hard to make a good card. So you've got this beautiful greeting card. It's blank on the inside, but then on the back it has a great chart. So we sell these for $2.50 in the shop, and we'll sell an assortment for $23. So these are great. What we have done with these little designs on the back, well, they make beautiful smalls, and so at some point I will bring out some of the smalls that people have made and allow us to keep here in the shop to show. They're the beautiful, beautiful finishing on those smalls, to give you some ideas of how you can finish those smalls. But we also had some banding that we offered where you could basically stitch, you know, at least for all the samplers that were currently had a card form, you could stitch all those little motifs on one piece of banding in a vertical format and basically roll it up or use it as a bell pull or whatever you wanted to do with it. So we still do have some of that banding. I will put a link for that out there too. We may be down, I'll have to look and see what colors we have right now. I feel like we ran out of a color. And the banding comes from Vocal and Hollenbeck in Germany. It's really beautiful banding. It's all 28 count. For the most part, there's a little bit of 8 and a little bit of 21, but most of it is 28 count. So I wanted to show you the card. I also want to show you a new pattern from the Primitive Hare. Now the Primitive Hare is also coming here this year for Halloween retreat, so we're pretty excited about that. It might be getting pretty close to full. I'll check that and put that out there for you guys as well. We've got a lot of people signed up for it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it is a first, which means that there will be a second. So it won't be every year, but Isabel and I have agreed to do it every other year. So every other year, Isabel from the Primitive Hare will be at Sassy Jack's for Halloween. North Carolina, because it was settled by so many Celtic people, Scott-Irish, we love Halloween. We do it right. And people ask me all the time, where did the name Sassy Jack's come from? Well, it's also a play on words, because I'm like that. It's Sassy Jack's, and the reason it doesn't have any possessive apostrophe up there is it's a nice nod to all the Jacks of Halloween that come out, so all the jack-o'-lanterns. So we like to bring out our jack-o'-lanterns at Halloween and really do Halloween right, and I love Halloween. You know, I love Christmas and I love Easter too, but I really love Halloween. I just always have. And so, you know, it's a chance for us to really decorate and enjoy, and we're super thrilled to have the Primitive Hare here this year, and hopefully to have it be a recurring kind of thing. And so we have a great classroom space. You've heard me talk about that on some other venues. And we'll have lots of room for people, so it'll be a big fun party. So Isabel came out with some new charts, and this one has the ocean in it. She spent some time at the ocean, and if you look at this fabric, it's actually one piece of linen. So I wanted to show it to you because we got it in the shop, and it comes packaged like this. It's really beautiful. It's called Ocean and Skies. And so I'm going to undo this one, which means it's going to be really wrinkled when I actually get it undone. But the color on it changes, and it would be really beautiful for mermaids. So I'm going to put it up here where you can see it. But you can kind of see how it moves from the dark blue up to the light blue. So I just think that is just fabulous for anything oceany, anything mermaids. And we do have that. You'll be able to buy that online if it's not already out there. It's $26 for the piece. We don't cut it down for obvious reasons, but it's a big enough piece you can do most things. The other thing I really wanted to talk about was lacing. The sampler behind me, Mary Lee, is laced. And I'm going to grab it. I'll have to cut this out and show it to you. I'm going to grab it just so you can see. Okay. So I'm back. So I wanted to show you how a sampler, you know, is laced. So this is Mary Lee, really pretty. On a new sampler, and Nicola has some videos posted on this, and probably some other people do too, there's usually a lot of extra fabric. So you can see how much extra fabric is on here before you get to the bottom. And of course that's different for every piece. I mean, everybody does it a little bit differently. You can see if you look at the front of this, the edge of this, you know, it's maybe 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/3 from the design. And so normally you have a 3-inch margin to use to stitch with. Okay, so we're back. So normally you have a 3-inch margin around your entire design. That's the way we cut it. Most shops cut it that way. Sometimes you only have a 2-inch, but either way, if you're going to frame really close like that one is, then you've got a lot of extra fabric. So when we talk about lacing, there is a movement out there right now that says don't lace. And I don't disagree with that. When we do antiques, we don't lace them. And we don't lace them because generally there's not much extra fabric on there, and we don't want to pull what is there and cause more tension and more damage to the sampler over time. So when we have an antique, we actually use a lot of acid-free products to stabilize that antique inside the frame, away from the wood and away from the glass. On an antique, we would either float that design on top of an acid-free mat board, and it's held in there with some spacers and the framing, or if it had enough fabric to go to the back, which is actually kind of rare on an antique, we would use some acid-free tape. And sometimes even on our modern reproduction samplers, if there's not a lot of extra fabric, we're not going to lace it. We're going to use some acid-free tape to hold it down. There's no residue from the adhesives on the tape. It's far enough away from the stitching where, you know, it would never be a problem if you had to take it apart and reframe it. It's just safer because you're not having that constant tug on your work or on the antique that would cause it to have, you know, additional issues over time. On something that has a lot of fabric, honestly, I lace it because it's easier for me to position. So, you know, I've got a bunch of models actually from the Primitive Hair. You can see some of them. Those are really pretty. But I have probably 6 more that I've got to lace and get up there. I laced most of those. I think one was laced. I think I might have had to unlace it and relace it. Because it's easier for me to position it. Once it's laced, I can kind of shift it just a smidge here and there and get it centered. Whereas if it's taped and you see that it's not quite centered, then you gotta untape it. Now I also do pin it. So whether we pin it or tape it, whether we lace it or tape it with the acid-free tape, we do pin it first. And so you try to get it positioned and you pin all the way around it. And then if you're gonna lace it, you leave those pins in and you lace it. If you're going to tape it, you know, make sure you leave your pins in until you've got it positioned and you get it taped. Usually then we take all the pins out because we don't like the pins in there either, to be honest. There are some pins that state that they will not corrode over time. I don't know about that, and so I stay away from the pins. But I've seen some posts and I've heard some people talking about lacing, whether you should or whether you shouldn't, and I've seen people on both sides of the fence, and the answer is yes. Yes you should, yes you shouldn't. It depends on what you're doing and what you're doing it with. And so if you've got a lot of extra fabric, lacing's not going to hurt it, because lacing is not going to be pulling on the stitched part to any degree that would hurt it or harm it. If you've got an antique and you have, you know, an inch or a quarter of an inch or a half an inch, I don't lace it. I either sew it onto an acid-free backing, or my framer does. We sew it onto the acid-free backing, or we float it, and, you know, floating it involves some sewing like that too. So you're basically putting some very invisible stitches just to secure that sampler onto something so that it can stay where you positioned it, and then it's, you know, then put inside of its frame. You don't want it to touch wood, you don't want it to touch glass, and so you need to make sure that there are spacers in there. So then the question comes up with, what if you buy an old sampler and you've got old glass? Well, we do that on a pretty regular basis, and the first thing that we do is we take it out of the frame and we make sure it's not touching anything wood or anything glass. And so you've got 2 choices. You can replace the glass with museum quality glass, which will protect the sampler from light, from UV rays, from dust and dirt. You can keep your old glass, you know, if you like the old glass, and then you just have to make sure that if it's very fragile, that you keep it away from light on a pretty regular basis. Oh, sorry, allergies. You really probably, if you've never left anything in fluorescent light or in a lot of light, you may not understand how much damage light does, but just the light in the shop, you know, these fluorescent bulbs do a lot of damage to things, and so we generally will rotate things around. If we've got models on loan, we don't keep them, you know, forever. We send them back. We send them on to where they're going. If they're ours, we take them down and shift stuff around, or we have it under museum quality glass. Those are really the choices here. Just because we want to protect it from a lot of things. We want to protect it from dust and dirt, from light, even from hands of little people who might walk through the shop. So we're pretty conscious about how we handle our needlework. So the choice is really yours. You know, you can leave it in the frame it came in, which I do that on a regular basis if I love the frame, and a lot of them are gorgeous frames. But I try to get them off things that would damage them, and sometimes that's hard because the sampler might be literally nailed to a piece of 150, 200-year-old wood or older. And so you've got nail holes in your sampler, which means that you might have to put a mat around it or something else like that. There's a lot of struggles that you deal with when you're doing something like that, but the important thing is to try to do no harm and try to protect it for the future. We really are just stewards of these antiques. They have a life beyond us. That's our goal. And so we want to get them away from touching glass. Glass does a lot of damage. And I physically see all the time damage done to the sampler just from the wood that it's laying on or touching. So it may be on something it may not be on a piece of old wood, although a lot of them are. It might just be on a normal chipboard or something like that that's reasonably safe for it if it's acid free, but because it's touching the wood on the sides of the frame on the inside, there's deterioration all around the edge of the sampler, and that's a shame because a lot of stitching is usually right there, so you lose some of that. So, you know, if you find yourself in possession of an antique and you're trying to decide what to do, really, you can do nothing, and you know it'll probably be okay for a while, but it's not going to last forever. You can take it to, you know, somebody who understands textiles and antiques, and you can have them, you know, remove it from anything that's not acid free on the back of it. Make sure that it's not touching the wood around the interior of the frame. Make sure it's not touching the glass. They'll put some spacers in there, and you can leave it in its frame, or you can change out the glass and put museum glass. And we go both ways with the glass. There are some that just are underneath such a beautiful piece of, you know, old bubbled glass that I just want to keep it. But those don't get to be on display very much. They're at home in our bedroom usually, which is a darkest room most of the day because I'm here most of the day. So, you know, those are your choices. And because you have them in your own home, you can make those choices as it is appropriate to you. But I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about at least my perception of lacing and the good and the bad of that. I think it has its place. I don't think it's every place. I think if you've got something fragile, you certainly don't want to, you know, make it more fragile by pulling on it. If you've got something where you've got a lot of extra fabric, it's not going to hurt it. You know, it's not going to do anything to damage the stitched portion of the piece. If you get within an inch of that stitched stuff or an inch and a half, I probably wouldn't lace it at that point. I would tape it. So that's kind of my take on that. The other thing I wanted to do was wrap a hoop. And so I'm going to illustrate a little bit of that for you here, and then I will insert like a little video or some pictures of it to show you a little bit more. So this is the hoop everybody fell in love with. It's a Hardwick Manor, you know, 7/8 inch deep hoop. I love this hoop. I use it on a pretty regular basis. I have not wrapped this one. Now, we do have in replacement screws. So if you don't wrap your hoop, and sometimes even if you do, you might strip out this screw. And there's really two size screws, but this one size fits virtually everything. There's a really large square hoop that it won't fit, and it also doesn't fit the oval hoops. But for the round hoops, it'll fit almost all of them. I think all of them actually, and it fits most of the square hoops up until you get to a really large size, like over 16 inches. So if you find yourself in need of a replacement screw, we do have those on our website, and we do have them in the shop, and you can order yourself one of those. Now, if you've used your hoop for quite some time without wrapping it, you've probably stripped that screw by now, or a screw by now, because you can crank these things down pretty tight. And it's a beautiful hoop, and it sits really nice in the hand. But you know, to get it its best traction, you really need to wrap it. So you can wrap both both parts of the hoop, or you can just wrap the inner hoop. And in one of the recent newsletters, I put a link out there to Mary Corbett's tutorial on how to wrap a hoop. And Mary Corbett just wraps the inner hoop, and I've done it both ways. I find most of the time that just the inner hoop is sufficient for what I do. So I want to get you started here with that. This is twill tape. This is French twill tape. It's the right size tape for this. You can use two sizes on this one. You can use the 3/4 inch or the 1/2 inch. They'll both work on this. It's pretty inexpensive. I want to say that this is like $4 or something like that. And we do almost always have it in stock. We ran out after Nicola's class because we just sold them really quick. You can use anything to wrap those. So you can use this French twill tape. This comes in other colors too, but we mainly just keep the white. You can use other twill tape. You can use some bias tape if it's flat enough. You can take quilting fabric and tear it in a long strip, and you can use that to wrap. You need to wash it though. Make sure it's been washed. So I'm just taking this off of its little card, and you can see there's a lot of it. I think that because this is the 1/2 inch or the 3/4 inch, it's only, I want to say 3 yards. Yeah, it's only 3 yards. Only 3 yards that you've got to figure out how to wrap your hoop with. So the first time I did this, I'll tell you how I did it. I started correctly. So I had this thing and I started to wrap, and I was constantly grabbing this and shoving it through the hoop and grabbing this and shoving it, and it was very annoying. And so the next few times I did this, I got smart, and this is what I wanted to show you. I rolled it up into a little ball like this. So I'm going to roll this one up because it makes it so much easier when you're shoving it in and out of your hoop. So this is going to take me a minute, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to cut this out and come back. But you see what I'm doing, right? I'm just rolling it into a little hoop. So, okay, so we're back. So I rolled it into a little roll. And so, you know, you can go in any direction that you're comfortable with. But you want to just wrap it around. Now, the first one that you wrap, you need to kind of catch. You need to kind of go over that very first one. You see how it's so much easier when you have it in a little ball. See how I'm coming through? Now, you can overlap if you want to, but the reality is that you don't need to truly overlap this very much. You really just need to kind of make sure that the edges meet. But if you want to overlap it just a smidge, you can. So, just a little bit. Or you can just have them meet and make sure you just kind of slide it together. But you're literally just kind of going around your hoop, and it's hard for me to do it and hold it up like this. I've usually got it held down. And you're just wrapping it, you know, pretty tight. So you want to have it tight. And you just kind of keep that motion going until you get to the end. So I will insert something that shows you what it looks like at the end. Then when you get it to the end, your two sides meet up together, and you just take a little bit of thread. You can use whatever thread you want, something pretty strong, and you just whip stitch it together. So you want to whip stitch the two end pieces together, and then so you may even want to stitch down the two sides, and I'll show you what that looks like too. And then you've got the inner hoop wrapped, and I think you'll find that you get a lot better traction on that hoop with that, and you won't as often strip out your little screws. So that's the hoop wrapping thing. Hopefully that's helpful. We do have, you know, the twill tape and then the hoops. I think this hoop, this big size is back ordered from the manufacturer, not just the distributor. But they'll come back in soon, and we'll put them back out there. But we do have the other sizes that came today, the ones that we were out of, and so they're behind me. So those will be up on the website for you too. So enough rambling. Gosh, you know, I think that these videos are actually maybe a little more fun when you have another person. I love the Sunshine Stitcher, so if you guys haven't watched that one, you need to. That one's a lot of fun. Just, you know, in closing, if you have questions or comments or things that you want to learn about or see, put that in the comment field below. You know, I would love it if you subscribed. We're definitely going to try to grow together, you know, and do some fun, interesting, unique things. So I want to give away one of Isabel's beautiful new fabrics. So I don't know a lot about Flosstube, but I hear people say all the time, don't put the word giveaway in the comment. So don't put the word giveaway in the comment. Tell me that you love the ocean. So if you put in there, I love the ocean, or something with ocean, then we will put your name in a random number generator and make sure that you get one of these. If you're the winner, that you have a chance to win, you know, one of these pieces of fabric. It's really beautiful. Again, this is what it looks like. So very, very pretty stuff. I think Isabel did a great job with that. The other thing that I would like to share with you guys are some copies of Mary Good, because it's ours and I can. So we'll give 5 of these away. So if you would like to be in the drawing to win one of these through a random number generator in our next episode, then in the comment field, don't put giveaway, put something about Mary Good. I love Mary Good, or Mary was a very good embroiderist, or something like that. Whatever, Mary Good, then we'll know that you wanted to own one of these charts. So with that, I think that's it for today. I hope you learned a little bit. I hope you enjoyed it. I appreciate you listening to all this. And definitely, you know, check out Mr. Rogers. He's a pretty neat person. Subscribe to us if you want to keep following us. I think we'll get better and better every time we do it. And we'll definitely have some guests, so that'll always be fun. And I'll work on the theme music there for us. So anyway, I hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your week. I hope you find some time to stitch, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks. Bye.